Some people think that social media should be a right, but some people have been abusing this right, whether it's Alex Jones or the President of the United States. We have them all on today's top 10 list. And right before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to our new channel, Viper Girl. This is going to be our new gaming streaming channel with your favorite host, Bree. She's going to be streaming everything from Minecraft to Five Nights at Freddy's to Cyberpunk and so much more. It premieres on January 22nd, so make sure that you go check it out. Without taking any longer, let's get into this list.
Oh my gosh, I almost died. I thought you were a cactus, my friend. I thought you were a cactus. We've got iron, baby. Yes. Okay, my main goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody. Bro, no, I'm gonna fight you with a pork chop. No, come here. This is awesome.
Coming in at number 10, we have Alex Jones. Now, this guy hasn't been banned from every single social platform, but the bulk of them have kicked him off. If any of you are not familiar with Alex Jones, he's the guy who had probably the biggest conspiracy theory podcast in the world. He would talk about how the government is run by interdimensional soulless aliens that have come to Earth to control us and steal our children. I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff he would talk about, like how the drinking water was turning the frogs gay, but the bulk of it was about trans-dimensional monsters. So as you can imagine, it was common for some pretty crazy rhetoric to come out of his mouth. Sometimes this was dangerous rhetoric, and his followers would go out of their way to attack normal people because they thought they were in on some evil conspiracy. So eventually Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and several other platforms kicked him off, so there was nowhere he could get his information out. Now you barely hear from him, but he does pop up on the Joe Rogan Experience every now and again. Next on the list, we have the North Korean people. Yeah, if you want to keep a stranglehold on your people, you can't have them getting their history facts from TikTok. By the way, there's very informative history bites on TikTok. You can actually learn quite a lot. Which brings me back to my point. In North Korea, you have very limited internet access because this not only lets you keep what's going on in your country a secret, you won't have someone sharing the horrors that they have to live through out to the world. That will bring in a lot of foreign attention, and a dictator wouldn't want that. On that same point, you don't want people being able to talk to each other and plan things on platforms that you are not in control of. So the North Korean people have very little access to the internet and social media. I mean, you wouldn't want your people finding out that you actually poo. That would ruin the whole operation. The whole world would come tumbling down if that information came out. Coming in number 8, we have Never Too Young to Start. The wild thing about some of the best hackers in the world is that they aren't even old enough to legally drink or drive. To think that someone who is just starting high school has the ability to hack into your computer and look through your personal information is pretty wild. Well, a hacker who goes by the name Cosmo the God got brought back down to earth in early 2012 after he was involved in several large hacking jobs. It's hard to pinpoint how many DDoS attacks and company takedowns he was involved in, but it would seem that it was quite a few, and this dude was only 15 at the time of his sentencing, and because of his crimes he was banned from using the internet unsupervised. And even while supervised, he was only allowed to use the internet for educational purposes. And that is through your formative years. The wild part about being banned from the internet as a hacker is that the hacking community is probably singing your praise for what you did, and you wouldn't even be able to see it. Next on the list, we have HIGINIO OCHOA. Here's a good way to not only get banned from social media, but to get banned from all internet access. HIGINIO OCHOA was a hacker. He went to some pretty far lengths. Some people would see him as a Robin Hood type figure. They might see him as someone who stood up for the people. But even if you think he was fighting for justice, what he did was illegal. He was a hacker during the Occupy Wall Street movement. Now it is known that plainclothes officers went into these protests to start violence so that the police could move in and shut it down. It's known that the police were covering their badges while committing acts of police brutality. Well, Ochoa, who goes by the username Wormer, didn't want these crimes to go unpunished, so he decided to fight crime with crime. He hacked into the police database and then he doxed the officers that were involved in these police brutality offenses. Well, eventually this was traced back to him and he was locked up. He had to serve some time in prison, but then some of the aspects of his parole were that he was not allowed to use the internet. So that means that you won't see him on social media anytime soon. Next on the list, we have the Iranian people. This is one that I didn't know before doing this list, but Iran has some massive censorship laws. Sites like YouTube and Twitter are blocked, and there's limited and monitored access to things like Facebook and Instagram. But the blocks go even deeper than that. You won't even be getting things like porn over there, which is wild. That's a freedom that you won't realize you missed until it's too late. Next on the the list we have Chris LAMPERCHT. I'm sure that a lot of you have heard of the job searching website Indeed. I mean, I sure have. I've actually got employment through that website more than once. Well, Chris LAMPERCHT was the guy who made that website. Thank you, Chris, because you inadvertently got me hired somewhere. But this dude was banned from using the internet for 8 years. Jeez, could you imagine if you couldn't post on social media or even Google something for 8 years? That would really suck because you would have to look everything up in books and that might be outdated information. Oh my god. You would definitely fall in love with the TV, but I don't think you're even allowed to use streaming services when you're banned from the internet. The crazy thing is that Chris LAMPERCHT was banned from the internet for crimes that didn't have anything to do with the internet. He did run a company that made its bankroll through the web, and he was a known hacker, but he was locked up for money laundering. Maybe there was some crossover with him laundering money and using his hacking skills to hide what he was doing, but whatever it was, the courts didn't like it and they said no more internet for you. Next on the list we have Gavin McInnes. That's a name that a bunch of us haven't heard for a while. Gavin McInnes was at one point one of the biggest names in media. He was one of the founders of Vice Media, back when it was known for edgy journalism that involved people venturing off into the dark corners of the world to bring back interesting stories. So you would think someone like that would have a very progressive mind. Well, it turns out no. The dude became extremely radical and started spouting hate speech on every platform he was present on. This turned into him founding the Proud Boys. You know that group that the police have been shutting down lately for domestic terrorism? Yeah, he founded them. What's crazy is that he's Canadian. The Proud Boys are huge in the States. But anyways, McInnes' hate speech eventually caught up with him and he was banned from Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Last time I checked, might be a few more by now. Next on the list we have David ICKE. If you look at David ICKE's career, it's a wild one. He goes from football announcer to Alex Jones of the UK. It's like, dude, you were just talking about soccer. You don't need to talk about the Anunnaki and how they're coming here to take over our minds and lives. For those of you who don't know David ICKE, he has been on the internet spouting some of the craziest rhetoric that you have ever seen in your life. Not only that, but he's written several books on the matter. I think you would be better off reading something a little bit more thought-provoking. Unless you want a wild work of fiction, then by all means pick up one of his books. Next on the list, guys, we have Julian Assange, one of the most famous political figures of the modern era. Julian Assange is the man behind WikiLeaks. He has been able to leak information on some of the biggest political figures in the world. Rumor has it that he was behind the Hillary Clinton email leak. But because of his constant fight for information to be available to the public, he has been banned from using the internet in several countries. This should be no surprise to all of you out there. If you start to unveil the dirty laundry of political leaders, they are going to come for you, even if they should be in prison themselves. And finally on the list, we have Donald Trump. I mean, this is what we're all here for, right? Never before in my life have I seen a president banned from this many things. Apparently, Trump has also stepped away from his presidential duties, and those have all been passed on to Pence. Now, I don't think he was banned from doing those duties. I just think that he probably doesn't want to because it's clear that he's not going to get his way. But that is not what we're here to focus on for this point. We are keeping an eye on the fact that President Donald Trump has been banned from nearly every social platform in America. Well, at least all the ones that matter. I mean, is he going to get on Omegle and tell 13-year-olds over webcam that he won the election even though he didn't? Honestly, if no one has done that sketch, someone needs to make that happen right now because that would be so funny. And we all know why this happened. It's because America finally hit a breaking point, which is wild when you think of how long it took for them to get there. Massive protests all over the world wasn't enough to point out that something was very wrong with the presidency. You had to wait for people to commit treason at the hail of the president. Well, we won't be reading any tweets or posts from this guy anytime soon, maybe for the rest of his life. And he's double impeached. The next few weeks are going to be very interesting, to say the least. All right, guys, that has been our list. I've been your host, Chad Arena, and until next time, keep enjoying this content. Bye.